Hi everyone, I'm Shaylin here with Reedsy. Today we're going to be talking about writing a novella. A novella falls in that space between short story and novel. And although it's not always the most popular form, it is a very versatile form, so if you're interested in writing a novella, here are a few tips. So first of all, what exactly is a novella in terms of word count? Things can get a little iffy when trying to break down these different types of story based on word count. We can't even really agree on what exactly constitutes a short story in terms of word count. So this is a bit of a ballpark, but in general, a novel is considered to be a work of fiction between 15,000 and 40,000 words. Now, of course, it's really important to remember that the difference between 15,000 words and 40,000 words is huge. A 15,000 word novella will probably be, in essence, a short story, which is kind of a bit of a longer short story, whereas a 40,000 word novella will be almost a novel and kind of just feel like a shorter novel. So where you think your novella will fall in terms of word count can really impact the structure and the techniques. If you feel like your novella is going to be on the really short end or the really long end, you might want to think of it more as a novel or more like a short story. Novellas are kind of enigmatic in that sense. They're in the gray area between short story and novel, but they also take qualities from both. So if you write both short stories and novels, you're probably perfectly equipped to try your hand at writing a novella. Here are a few tips. First of all is to keep a focused conflict. Novellas are more like short stories in this regard. They need a more focused conflict in order to stay within the confines of the word count. While a novel will have a primary conflict, it'll probably also have a lot of facets to this conflict and a lot of subplots. With a novella, you probably don't want to have any subplots at all, and you really just want to focus on this one singular conflict. If you want to have a lot of subplots, then you might want to consider a longer piece. Tip number 2 is to keep it to a small cast. The more characters you add, inherently the larger the word count and the scope of the story will go, and the more likely it is that your story will require you to go beyond that 40,000 word mark. So try to keep your cast as small as possible, probably less than 5 main characters, if not less than that. There are novels that only have 5 main characters or less than that, so this is totally doable. Thinking of your main cast as being only 2, 3, or 4 characters, again, similar to a short story, will help keep the word count and the story focused. One thing that might help is to think of it as a film. A lot of people see the feature film and the novel as being equivalent, but in reality, a film probably has a lot less content than a novel. So a movie is a pretty good idea of the structure and content that will go into a novella. So if you want to know how to structure your novella, turn it to film structures. Things like Save the Cat or 8 Sequence are specifically designed for films, and although these structures usually don't provide enough plot beats to fill up an entire novel, and provide way too many to pack into a short story, they're probably about on par with the number of plot beats that you'll need for a novella. So if you plan to outline your novella beforehand, that's something that you can aim for or use to guide you. Another way to think of the structure of your novella is again with 3-act structure. It kind of never fails. Think about each act being between around 5 and 15,000 words, maybe 20,000 for your middle act if you're writing a longer novella. If you don't want to follow something as structured as like an entire film structure, this is a good way to make sure you still have solid pacing. You also want to use the form to your advantage, and this applies to almost any form. I think a lot of people see the constraints, the word count restraints of a short story or a novella as being a detriment. You know, it's kind of something that you have to work within, but it's difficult. When in actuality, the word count restraints of shorter forms are what can make them great. So use the form to your advantage. A shorter piece can create a very pointed, sharp, focused sense of conflict. It allows you to zero in on one aspect of a story and really explore it. One great place to apply this is to make sure you really earn the ending. A novella is a great form to either have a twist ending or just some kind of revelation at the ending. You don't need a twist, but a really impactful, bright ending is a great way to end a piece of this length. You don't have to string the reader along for 80,000 words before a reveal, but you have enough time to really build up to that ending or that reveal. So whether your ending is open, closed, a twist, a reveal, whatever it is, make sure it's really earned. Finally, of course, one of the most helpful things that you can do is to just read novellas. There aren't a ton out there, to be fair. It's definitely not as popular as a novel, and you'll often find novellas either within a short story collection for shorter novellas, or you'll find them just kind of sold as novels, but they'll be very short. So A couple novellas that I really like that I would recommend would be Grief is the Thing with Feathers by Max Porter, which is a great exercise in voice experiment. McGlue by Atessa Moshfegh, which is a great experiment in time and memory and uses the short space to really play with an unreliable narrator. And finally, another really good one is Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin. The structure is almost muddled to the point that you don't really know what's going on, and it's a great example of a piece that, because it's so short, is able to string the reader along even though the reader doesn't really understand what's going on. You won't understand what's going on in Fever Dream, but that's why you want to keep reading. If the piece were any longer, it probably wouldn't be sustainable, but it works perfectly here. So as a review, a novella is a fiction-length work between 14,000 words and 40,000 words, and fall in that gray area between a novel and a short story, and can take qualities from both. A few tips are to remember to keep a focused conflict and a small cast. And when you're structuring your novella, think of it as being equivalent to a feature-length film in terms of how much content you'll need. And when in doubt, you can always rely on the 3-act structure. Make sure to use the form and the length of the form to your advantage rather than seeing it as a detriment. And make sure that you really earn the ending. That's really important in a shorter piece like this that still gives you time for a good amount of development. So those are some tips on writing a novella. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos from us. We've got new writing, editing, and publishing tips every Tuesday and Friday. Until next time.